In the 60s, my grandparents built a hall to store tools in. Over the last decades, it became more and more of a junk room, so cluttered with stuff that it was hardly usable. I started to clear everything out and to sort it. Usable timber was stored underneath the roof. The hall has two large swing gates for an entrance. The third garage door on the far right is a separate one of its own. The hall is illuminated by two windows, one at the front and one at the back. The window at the back is in a small closed room in the back of the hall, which used to be my grandfather's workshop. The hall is about 10 meters long and 6 meters wide, so it has about 60 square meters in total. My plan was to convert this hall into a workshop. First of all, a large workbench would have to be built and mounted onto the wall. On the workbench would be a strip with sockets to supply the machines with power. On the wall I'd install a French cleat system to flexibly attach tools. I still have a few pegboards, which would then be attached to the French cleat to carry some smaller tools. In the back room I would put a dust collector with tubes running underneath the ceiling, with branches leading to the devices. One of the first steps was to free the outer wall from the vines which had been grown there for years. A large crack had appeared which ran across a window through the entire exterior wall. Apparently, part of the building had settled down, which would explain the crack. So I started to uncover the crack from the inside. The plaster was damp and had to be removed anyway, probably because of the crack. Here the scale of the damage should show itself. A part of the brick wall was already very crumbly and fell off. In the hall were a bunch of old TVs. I cleaned them, put them on the street, and had them picked up by a company. In front of the future workshop, a rubbish heap had formed in the meantime. The garbage heap had been gradually loaded onto cars and taken to our depots and dumps. The heap got periodically smaller and smaller, grew again, just to shrink again. It had taken quite a long time till everything had been taken out of the hall. The next step was to remove the old and broken windows. To be on the safe side, I supported the load-bearing beams above the windows. I removed the dilapidated brickwork as well, so it was easier to remove the window frame. The frames were made entirely of metal and firmly anchored into the brick wall. The glass glued directly to the metal. It's not surprising that the window had cracked. One searched in vain for expansion joints. After I proceeded quite carefully with the first window, I was somewhat rougher with the second one. The second window was much more difficult to lever out of the wall, partly because the wall hadn't fallen apart. but at some point the frame gave in. Now the resulting hole in the wall had to be closed again before I could insert new windows. Therefore, I first shaped the opening rectangular so I could place bricks in it. Some of those bricks I found in my backyard, some were found in the hall. Unfortunately, I choose one of the coldest days of the year to rebuild the wall. One should not lay bricks if it's below 5 degrees Celsius, because ice crystals can form in the water contained in the mortar, which then does not firm up. I wrapped the whole construct in mineral wool as good as I could and hoped it would all work out. The main thing was to finish it. No work of beauty, but might do just fine. To plaster the whole thing properly now, I built a scaffold in the wall opening. The openings became a little bit bigger through my work and the ordered window did not fit in anymore. But I didn't want to return them and order new ones, so I had to clean a lot up until it was back to the old measurements. Now the windows could be finally inserted. First, we built a supporting structure which prevents the windows from simply falling through the opening. Then I fixated them with wedges, screwed them to the wall and secured the construction with expanding foam. After both windows had been inserted, I could start to plaster the wall again from the inside. Final spurt. After cleaning up, I noticed the plaster falling off everywhere on the base. After I then plastered it again, I could start with the priming. But first, I installed new lamps to finally have some light in my workshop in the evenings. The old floor covering was suitable as a drip catch for the priming work. It hasn't been moved for about 30 years. Now everything gets primed. The primer binds the crumbly and dusty plaster surface and offers the paint a suitable ground. After everything had dried for a few hours, it was time for some color. I applied the paint in 2 layers, and walls first, floor second. I cleared the last corners of the hall and swept through it again before the dusty concrete floor was primed, and then blue-gray painted. The color was important, less because of the appearance, but primarily to prevent the floor from gathering further dust. An unpainted concrete floor results in a permanently dusty room. This completes the initial stage of building my new workshop. The basics have been set. The next step will be building my workbench.